The conference chamber aboard the Galactic Council's flagship was, by all accounts, a marvel of diplomatic engineering. 7 different atmospheric zones, each tailored to the biological needs of the major species, hummed with the quiet efficiency that only comes from technology so advanced it might as well be magic. Too bad none of that mattered when you were about to witness the most spectacular diplomatic train wreck in recorded history. Issei Keth 9 of the Third Claw had the dubious honor of serving as the Reptilian Coalition's observer for what was supposed to be a routine trade negotiation. Routine. Keen. The universe apparently had a sense of humor darker than a black hole's event horizon. The human representative had just walked in, and already half the delegates were having what I could only describe as nervous breakdowns, not the dramatic flailing kind, mind you. The quiet, dignified kind where grown beings suddenly develop an intense interest in their datapads while their breathing patterns suggest imminent cardiac failure. She was tall for a human, which still made her shorter than most of us, but somehow she managed to make the entire room feel smaller just by existing in it. Her name was Captain Maya Torres, according to the briefing documents that had arrived approximately 30 seconds before she did. 30 seconds. The humans had given us 30 seconds notice for a negotiation that would determine trade routes affecting 12 star systems. The audacity was almost admirable. Almost. Ambassador Vex Prime of the Silicon Collective, a being who normally spoke with all the emotional range of a particularly sophisticated calculator, actually stammered as he addressed her. Captain Torres, we were expecting someone from your diplomatic corps. Maya Torres smiled. It was the kind of smile that predators probably practiced in mirrors. I'm sure you were. But you are military. Yes. Surely someone with proper negotiating authority should. Oh, I have authority. Her smile widened, showing those unsettling human teeth. The question is, do you want to find out exactly how much? I made a note in my personal log. The humans had just deployed what military strategists call a calculated ambiguity. It was either brilliant or completely insane. With humans, those two categories had an alarming tendency to overlap. The ethereal collective's representative, Whisper of Distant Stars, floated closer with the kind of graceful movement that made the rest of us look like we were walking through molasses. Perhaps we should begin with introductions and establish the scope of... Scope? Maya interrupted, and I swear the temperature in the room dropped 3 degrees. The scope is simple. You want access to human shipping lanes through the Perseus Arm. We want compensation that doesn't insult our intelligence. Vex Prime's optical sensors flickered in what I recognized as confusion. But surely we must first discuss the framework for negotiation, establish protocols, determine who has the authority to. I'm authorized to decide. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear my own hearts beating, both of them, which was concerning, because usually only one beats when I'm relaxed. Decide. The word came from Krill Master Thorn of the Aquatic Dominion, spoken through his translation device with enough disbelief to power a small star. You mean negotiate, surely. Maya Torres looked at him with the kind of patience usually reserved for explaining basic mathematics to particularly slow children. No, I mean decide. You can negotiate among yourselves if you want. Figure out what you're willing to offer. When you're ready, I'll decide if it's acceptable. I felt my tail involuntarily coil around my chair leg. This was either the most brilliant power play I'd ever witnessed, or we were about to watch a human single-handedly start an interstellar incident. Again, the Crystalline Republic's delicate structure of perfect order resonated with harmonics that translated roughly to indignation. This is highly irregular. The Galactic Trade Accords clearly state that all parties must engage in good faith negotiation with properly authorized representatives. Oh, I'm properly authorized. Maya's tone remained conversational, as if she were discussing the weather instead of casually demolishing centuries of diplomatic protocol. I'm authorized to grant or deny access to human space. I'm authorized to set terms. I'm authorized to walk out of here and leave you all trying to explain to your governments why your trade routes just became 40% longer and 60% more expensive. She paused, letting that sink in. The question isn't whether I'm authorized. The question is whether any of you are authorized to actually make decisions, or if you're just here to waste everyone's time while you send messages back home, asking mommy and daddy what to do. I had to admire the tactical brilliance, even as I felt my secondary stomach developing what humans would probably call an ulcer. She'd just turned the entire power dynamic on its head. Instead of the human representative being the one under scrutiny, she'd made everyone else justify their presence. Vex Prime's optical array cycled through what I was fairly certain was the Silicon Collective equivalent of a migraine. Captain Torres, with respect, this approach seems rather confrontational. Confrontational. Maya laughed, and the sound was somehow more unsettling than her smile had been. Oh, Vex Prime, you haven't seen Confrontational. This is Tuesday afternoon casual. Would you like to see Confrontational? That will not be necessary. Whisper of distant stars interjected quickly, their ethereal form rippling with what I'd learned to recognize as anxiety. Perhaps we could discuss the specific terms you might find acceptable. Now we're getting somewhere. Maya settled back in her chair with the satisfaction of someone who'd just won a game everyone else was still trying to figure out the rules to. Here's what's going to happen. Each of your governments wants something different from access to our shipping lanes. Some of you want military positioning. Some want economic advantage. Some want technological access. She gestured to a holographic display that materialized above the table, showing star charts that were far more detailed than anything in our intelligence briefing. How had the humans mapped our territories with such precision? When had they done it? More importantly, why hadn't we noticed? The Reptilian Coalition wants to establish supply bases for their expansion into the outer space. The Silicon Collective wants access to the rare earth deposits on human colony worlds. The Ethereal Collective wants to study our fascinating approach to faster-than-light communication. The Aquatic Dominion wants fishing rights in systems we control. The Crystalline Republic wants our manufacturing techniques. She paused, looking around the table with those disturbingly direct human eyes. What none of you seem to understand is that we know exactly what you want, why you want it, and what you're planning to do with it once you get it. Silence was back, heavier this time. I found myself wondering if this was how prey animals felt when they suddenly realized they were being hunted. So here's my decision, Maya continued, as casually as if she were ordering lunch. Each of you can have exactly one thing from your wish list. 1. In exchange, we get something from each of you that we want. Non-negotiable. Take it or leave it. Krill Master Thorn's gills fluttered with what I recognized as agitation. But we haven't even discussed terms. What about quantities, time frames, restrictions? Surely there must be room for what? Negotiation. Maya's smile was back, sharp as a blade. I thought I was clear. I'm not here to negotiate. I'm here to decide. You want negotiation? Go home. Send actual diplomats. People with the authority to say yes or no without checking with 15 different committees first. Structure of perfect order resonated with frequencies that hurt my hearing. This is preposterous. The Galactic Trade Accords require good faith negotiation between equals. Equals. Maya stood up, and somehow managed to loom over beings twice her size. Let me explain something about equals. Equals don't spend 6 months building a coalition to pressure one species into trade agreements. Equals don't send fleets to patrol the borders of space they want access to. Equals don't hack communication networks to spy on internal discussions. The room went very, very quiet. Even the atmospheric processors seemed to hold their breath. Oh yes, we know about all of that. Every single bit of it. Maya's voice was still conversational, but there was something underneath it now. Something that made my predator instincts simultaneously want to flee and hunt. Did you really think we wouldn't notice? Did you honestly believe that a species capable of fighting the Void Hunters to a standstill wouldn't keep track of what our allies were doing? I made another note in my personal log. The humans had known about the coalition from the beginning. This entire meeting wasn't a negotiation at all. It was a demonstration. Vex Prime's optical sensors dimmed to almost nothing. We were merely ensuring regional stability by building a fleet 3 times the size of anything you'd need for regional defense, by running intelligence operations in neutral space, by coordinating your efforts to present what you thought would be an overwhelming united front. Maya sat back down, but the casual pose somehow made her more threatening, not less. Here's what's going to happen now. You're going to go back to your ships. You're going to contact your governments. You're going to explain that the humans are offering a one-time deal. Take it, or find another way to your destinations that doesn't involve our space. How long do we have to consider? Whisper of distant stars asked quietly. Maya checked a device on her wrist. You have until I finish my coffee. Every being in the room stared at the small cup sitting on the table next to her. It was still steaming. That's impossible, Krill Master Thorn sputtered. Major trade agreements require months of consideration, committee reviews, impact studies. Then I suggest you start drinking faster. Maya picked up her cup and took a deliberately slow sip. Or better yet, start making decisions instead of studies. The next few minutes were, without question, the most frantically diplomatic I had ever seen the Galactic Council become. Representatives were speaking into communication devices in at least 6 different languages simultaneously. Data streams flew back and forth between the ships. Emergency sessions were being called. Governments that normally took weeks to agree on lunch menus were suddenly discovering the miracle of executive decision-making. Maya Torres sat calmly in the middle of it all, sipping her coffee and occasionally checking her wrist device. With 10 minutes left on what I had calculated to be approximately a 20-minute coffee drinking timeline, something remarkable happened. The representatives started saying yes, not grudgingly, not with reservations, actually, genuinely, yes, because sometime in the last hour, they had all realized the same thing I had realized. This wasn't a negotiation, this was a test to see if they could actually make decisions when they needed to. A test to see if they understood that the humans weren't asking to join the galactic community. They were announcing that the galactic community could join them, if it was smart enough. Maya finished her coffee, set down the cup, and smiled that predator smile one more time. Excellent. I'll have the contracts ready in an hour. Try not to overthink them. As the representatives filed out, still in various states of shock, I lingered. Professional curiosity, I told myself. Definitely not the kind of morbid fascination that compels you to watch natural disasters. Captain Torres. She looked up from a datapad she'd produced from somewhere. Yes, Observer Keth 9. The fact that she knew my name and rank without checking any notes was somehow the most unsettling thing that had happened all day. And that was saying something. Was any of that actually planned? Or are you just incredibly good at improvising? Maya Torres laughed, and for the first time, it sounded genuinely amused rather than threatening. Oh, Observer Keth 9, let me share something about humans. We're very good at making plans, but we're even better at making them up as we go along. She stood up, gathering her things with efficient movements. The question you should be asking isn't whether this was planned. The question you should be asking is what we're planning next. And with that cheerfully ominous statement, she walked out, leaving me alone in the conference chamber, with the growing certainty that the galaxy had just changed in ways we were only beginning to understand. I started working on my report, but kept finding myself staring at the empty coffee cup she'd left behind. Somehow I didn't think the story was over yet. I was absolutely right about the story not being over. What I hadn't anticipated was that the second act would make the first look like a quiet tea party between civilized beings. 43 hours later, I found myself back in the same conference chamber, though this time the atmosphere, both literal and metaphorical, had changed dramatically. The 7 atmospheric zones were still humming along, but there was an electric tension in the air that made my scales itch. Every representative was present, but now they had company. Big, scary, heavily armed company. The Silicon Collective had brought their enforcement protocols. The Ethereal Collective had materialized their war singers. The Aquatic Dominion's battle tide was floating in portable tank systems that somehow managed to look menacing. The Reptilian Coalition had deployed their finest claw guards, and even the normally peaceful folks from the Crystalline Republic had resonated their harmonic disruptors into existence. It was like watching someone throw a surprise party, except instead of cake and balloons, everyone brought weapons and bad intentions. Maya Torres walked in wearing the exact same uniform as before, carrying the exact same casual confidence, and accompanied by exactly 0 visible security. She had, however, brought a different cup of coffee. I was beginning to think the beverage choice was somehow tactical. Well, this is cozy, she said, settling into her chair as if surrounded by enough firepower to level a small moon. Was just another Tuesday. I see everyone brought friends. How thoughtful. Ambassador Vex Prime's optical array flickered with what I'd learned to recognize as Silicon Collective smugness. Captain Torres, I'm afraid there have been some complications with our government's review of your proposed terms. Complications. Maya sipped her coffee with the kind of deliberate calm that made my survival instincts start screaming. What sort of complications? The kind that require renegotiation. Whisper of distant stars said, their ethereal form rippling with harmonics that definitely hadn't been present during our last meeting. It seems our respective leadership councils have decided that your terms were somewhat unreasonable. I started calculating the distance to the nearest escape pod. Not because I was planning to use it, you understand. Just for professional thoroughness. And maybe mild panic. Maya set down her coffee cup with a small clink that somehow sounded louder than it should have. I see. And I suppose the fact that you've all brought enough military hardware to fight a small war is just a coincidence. Krill Master Thorn's gills fluttered with what might have been amusement. Merely a precautionary measure, Captain. Negotiations can be unpredictable when all parties are equally prepared. Equally prepared. Maya repeated the words like she was tasting something interesting. That's a fascinating phrase. Tell me, Krill Master, what exactly do you think you're prepared for? For honest negotiation between equals, structure of perfect order resonated, their harmonics carrying undertones of barely controlled aggression. With proper respect for the balance of power in this sector. Maya nodded thoughtfully, as if seriously considering their words. Then she did something that made every combat-trained being in the room simultaneously reach for their weapons. She laughed. Not the predatory laugh from before. Not the amused chuckle she'd given me after the first meeting. This was something entirely different. This was the sound of genuine delighted entertainment, as if someone had just told her the best joke she'd heard in years. Oh, that's precious, she said, wiping a tear from her eye. You actually think this is about negotiation? You sweet, naive, homicidal little creatures. You still don't get it, do you? The war singers started humming, the enforcement protocols activated targeting systems, the battle tide began circulating in aggressive patterns, the claw guards extended their natural weapons, the harmonic disruptors resonated at frequencies that made my teeth ache. Maya Torres sat in the middle of it all, completely relaxed, finishing her coffee. Computer, she said, conversationally, apparently addressing the air itself. Please show our guests the current tactical situation. The holographic display that materialized above the table was significantly more detailed than the star charts from the previous meeting. This one showed the entire sector in real time, complete with ship positions, weapon signatures, and fleet compositions. What it showed made my blood run cold. Then hot. Then cold again. The coalition fleet that everyone had been so proud of, the one that was supposed to present an overwhelming united front, was completely surrounded, not by human ships, which would have been scary enough, but by things that didn't appear on any known ship registry in the galactic database. Allow me to introduce the Third Fleet, Maya said pleasantly. They've been keeping an eye on things while we had our little chat. Vex Prime's optical sensors dimmed to pinpricks. Those aren't human ship signatures. No, they're not. Maya's smile was back sharper than ever. They're not Terran signatures either. Or Sol System. Or even human colonial authority. She stood up. And this time when she loomed, it felt like the entire universe was suddenly paying attention. See, that's the thing about assumptions. You assume that the humans you've been dealing with represent all of humanity. You assume that Earth's colonial authority speaks for every human settlement. You assume that our little corner of space was all we had. The tactical display zoomed out. And out. And out. What it revealed was a network of human settlements, bases, and installations that stretched across 3 galactic arms. Not the small recent colonies everyone knew about. Ancient settlements, established infrastructure, military installations that had been there for centuries. Surprise, Maya said softly. Whisper of distant stars' form was fluctuating wildly. That's impossible. Our surveys, our intelligence, showed you exactly what we wanted them to show. Maya's tone was still conversational, but there was steel underneath now. Did you really think we'd put all our eggs in one easily monitored basket? Did you honestly believe that a species paranoid enough to fight the Void Hunters would build everything in plain sight? I was taking very careful notes now, partly for my report and partly to keep my hands from shaking. This wasn't just a diplomatic reversal. This was a revelation that redrew the entire political map of known space. Here's what's really amusing, Maya continued, beginning to pace around the table like a predator circling prey. You spent months building your little coalition, coordinating your fleets, planning your negotiating strategy. The whole time you were doing exactly what we expected you to do. She stopped behind Vex Prime's chair. We've been 3 steps ahead of you since before you even knew we existed. Every intelligence coup you thought you'd achieved, we fed it to you. Every secret human weakness you discovered, we let you find it. Every strategic advantage you thought you had, we gave it to you. The silence in the room was absolute. Even the atmospheric processors seemed to have stopped humming. So now I'm going to make you a different offer, Maya said, returning to her seat. Not a negotiation, not a discussion, an offer. You can accept the original terms I presented, exactly as stated, and we can all pretend this little display of force never happened. She picked up her coffee cup, realized it was empty, and set it back down with obvious disappointment. Or you can try to fight a war against an enemy whose true capabilities you've just realized you never understood. An enemy who's been watching your every move, anticipating your every strategy, and preparing for every possible contingency. Krill Master Thorn's translation device crackled with static. And if we choose neither, if we simply leave and find alternate routes, oh, you can absolutely do that. Maya's smile was positively radiant. Of course, you might find that your alternate routes have become significantly more complicated recently. Asteroid fields where there weren't any before. Navigation hazards in previously clear space. Systems that suddenly require extensive detours. The tactical display shifted, showing the alternative trade routes each coalition member had been secretly planning. Every single one was now marked with various obstacles and complications. The thing about controlling space, Maya said thoughtfully, is that it's really quite large. Lots of room for things to shift around. Especially when you have the kind of advanced technology that comes from fighting entropy-based cosmic horrors for several centuries. Structure of perfect order resonated at frequencies so low I felt them in my bones. You're holding the entire sector hostage. Hostage. Maya looked genuinely puzzled. No. You misunderstand. I'm not holding anything hostage. I'm simply pointing out the reality of the situation. She gestured to the display. This is the galaxy as it actually exists, not as your intelligence services told you it exists. These are the real power structures, the real territorial controls, the real strategic positions. We're not threatening anyone. We're just clarifying the facts. I realized my jaw was hanging open and closed it with a snap. This wasn't just a power play. This was a complete restructuring of how galactic politics worked. The humans weren't joining the existing order. They were revealing that they'd been the hidden foundation of it all along. So, Maya said brightly. Who wants to go first? Accept the original terms, I mean. And please, don't all volunteer at once. There's only one of me, and I'd hate to have to process multiple acceptances simultaneously. The next few minutes were a masterclass in the collapse of collective bargaining power. It started with Whisper of Distant Stars quietly accepting the human terms. Then Structure of Perfect Order resonated agreement. Within 10 minutes, every single coalition member had individually capitulated. Maya Torres sat through it all with the satisfied expression of someone watching a plan come together exactly as designed. Excellent, she said, when the last acceptance had been recorded. The contracts will be ready for final signature in, let's say 6 hours. That should give everyone enough time to recall their fleets and send home their military observers. As the representatives filed out, looking significantly less confident than they had when they'd arrived, I found myself once again alone with the human captain. Observer Keth 9, she said, not looking up from her datapad, still curious about whether this was all planned. I considered my words carefully. Captain Torres, I'm beginning to think that asking whether something was planned might be the wrong question entirely. She looked up, and for a moment her expression was almost approving. Very good. You're learning. The right question isn't whether something was planned. The right question is whether you're smart enough to recognize when you're part of someone else's plan. Maya stood up, collecting her things with the same efficient movements as before. Your report is going to be interesting reading, she said, casually. I hope your superiors are prepared for some paradigm shifts. Captain Torres, I called out as she reached the door. What happens now? I mean, what's the next phase of whatever this really is? She turned back, and her smile was different this time. Less predatory, more anticipatory. Observer Keth 9, we've spent 300 years getting ready for the galaxy to notice us. Now that you have, we get to find out if you're ready for what comes next. Which is, the part where we stop pretending to be the new kids on the block, she said, and start acting like the species that's been keeping the lights on while everyone else was playing politics. And with that she was gone, leaving me alone with 2 empty coffee cups, a datapad full of impossible revelations, and the growing certainty that the galaxy had just discovered it was much smaller, much more complicated, and much more human than anyone had ever imagined. I started working on my report, wondering how exactly one goes about informing their government that everything they thought they knew about galactic politics was wrong. Then I realized that was probably exactly the point.